Politics.
It's never been done.
Let's talk about the politics. You're facing obviously a number of potential charges in other cases, and I know you've said that you believe that they're political witch hunts.
Of course.
But what do you say to the voter who really liked many of your policies?
They still do.
But they can't handle the scandals or the controversies or the name-calling or the vitriol. What do you say to that voter who's worried that that all leads to a general election loss?
So based on the polls, I'm leading Biden by a lot. Based on the polls, I'm leading all of the Republicans by a lot, by 40 points and more. Right now, I have the best polls I've ever had. People see this stuff for what it is. It's a political witch hunt. It's a continuation.
More independent voters watch Fox News than any other TV source.
A lot less than used to watch it.
They do watch. Those voters
But a lot less, Brett.
they usually make up all the difference in the election. And so to the female independent voter in the suburbs who struggled with family financing because of inflation, she's now against Biden, disapproves of Biden, but wasn't with you in 2020 and so far is a hard no for you in 2024. But what do you say
You're
to
not
that?
looking at the right polls.
What do you say to that female independent suburban voter who feels that way, to win her back?
First of all, I won in 2020 by a lot, okay? Let's get that straight. I won in 2020.
You know that this,
and if you look at all
that's
of the
not
tapes,
what
if
the
you look
vote
at
showed.
everything that you want to look at, you take a look at Truth to Vote, where they have people stuffing the ballot boxes on tapes, or
Mr. President,
let's
that
go
was
to
all
recent.
looked
Well,
into.
wait a minute. Let's go to recent. FBI Twitter. Let's go to recent. The 51 agents, all corrupt stuff, Brett.
Understand about the Hunter Biden,
no, but
all
that's cheating
fair
on the
things.
election.
But
that's cheating on the election.
you lost the 2020 election.
Brett, you take a look at all of the stuffed ballots. You take a look at all of the things, including things like the 51 intelligence agents.
There were recounts in all of the swing states. There was not significant widespread
We're trying
fraud.
to get recounts, real
There were
recounts, not just
investigations,
numbers of votes
widespread
cast.
corruption. There was not a sense of that. There were lawsuits, more than 50 of them, by your lawyers, some in front of
Brett, are you
judges that you appointed.
Look at Wisconsin.
That came out with no evidence.
Wisconsin has practically admitted it was rigged. Other states are doing the same right now, and it's continuing.
There have
It
been
was
reviews
a
of
rigged
every
election.
potential case of voter fraud in 6 battleground states, and they found fewer than 475 cases.
You know why?
that
Because
were
they
not
didn't look
affected.
at the right things.
Okay,
Brett.
are you going
they
to
were
be
counting? They were counting ballots, not the authenticity of the ballot. The ballots were fake ballots. You had this
I
was
asked,
a very rigged
Are
election.
you going to go? This is how you're going to tell that independent suburban woman voter
No,
to vote for
we're
you?
off to winning an election, and I think we're winning very well. I got a poll just recently. I have it here. I'd
No,
show
I
you.
know, and I watched
But
the
I've
numbers.
shown you every poll. I showed you we were leading by tremendous numbers, and
polls
we're
change.
leading with women, huh?
You know polls change. I mean, they changed in 2016 to your favor,
I thought I was doing well from the beginning, but you know.
but they changed the
Yeah.
polls. What did you learn from your first term that you took from, and changes that you would make if you get elected?
I would like to be less combative, but I find the press is extremely dishonest. And if I'm not combative, I don't get my word across. If I'm not combative, I don't know. I don't think you could win. I think, regardless me or somebody else, if somebody else got the nomination, these radical left maniacs would come after them at a level like you've never seen before, and they're not going to be able to withstand it. Our country is sick. It's sick. We have people that will do anything, and it's a very sad thing, like the document hoax. They should have never been brought. We're in the middle of a political campaign, and they want to arrest the opponent who's leading the person that's, in theory, in charge of government. This stuff shouldn't happen.
So what changes would you make?
Strong people, strong government. You know, when I came down to Washington, I was in Washington 17 times in my life in D.C., and I never stayed overnight. I was never there. I didn't know the people. I didn't know that world, other than I was involved in politics from the other side very much. And I put great people in, but I put some people like Bill Barr and Bolton and a few of them that, you know, actually Bolton was good because every time I negotiated, people said, oh, they've got this maniac here. He's going to go to war with us, and they'd concede every point. I mean, it was actually pretty good in a certain way. But we put people in that were great, and we put people in that weren't. I now know Washington probably better than anybody. I know the good ones and the bad ones, and we will have really great, strong people. I already know who they are, but we will have really great, strong people.
Okay. In 2016, you said that. I'm going to surround myself with only the best and most serious people.
Well, I did do that, and
This
we
time-
had tremendous, look, we had the best economy we've ever had,
This
the world
time-
has ever seen.
Your Vice President, Mike Pence, is running against you.
Yeah.
Your Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, she's running against you. Your former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said he's not supporting you. You mentioned National Security Advisor John Bolton. He's not supporting you either. You mentioned Attorney General Bill Barr, says you shouldn't be president again, calls you the consummate narcissist and troubled man. You recently called Barr a gutless pig. Your second Defense Secretary is not supporting you, called you irresponsible. This week, you and your White House called your White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, weak and ineffective and born with a very small brain. You called your acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, a born loser. You called your first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, dumb as a rock, and your first Defense Secretary, James Mattis, the world's most overrated general. You called your White House Press Secretary, Kayleigh Canadian, milquetoast, and multiple times you've referred to your Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, as Mitch McConnell's China-loving wife. So, why did you hire all of them in the first place?
Because I hired 10 to 1 that were fantastic. We had a great economy. We had phenomenal people in charge of the economy. We had phenomenal people in the military. I'm not a fan of Milley, and I'm not a fan of certain of the television people. But I knocked out ISIS. I defeated ISIS. They said, Mattis, it would take 3 years, and I don't think we can do it. I did it in a period of like 4 weeks.
There's a lot of people who
knocked-
praise you for your policies. I just said
True.
that.
That's true. Well, I mean, you just went through a list. But don't forget, for every one you say, I had 10 that love us. And one thing happens, I find, with me that I think didn't happen so much with other presidents. Call it glamorous time, call it whatever. But with me, the Times, the Washington Post, various people, even Fox, because, you know, I'm no great fan of Fox anymore. They fought me very hard. Well, you got to get your word out somehow, right? They fought me very hard in 2016, very much the way they're fighting me now, very, very hard. And I won. Then they became very nice. But I will tell you that something happens when people leave. They can like me very much. I have this woman named Alyssa Farah. She said the greatest things. Long after she left, he's the greatest president we've ever had. He was unbelievable, unbelievable. Then The View offered her a contract. But obviously, only if she changed her views. And all of a sudden, she can say negative things. Money gets offered to people, and some people change.
But there's
I will
people
say
on that
this,
list that are not taking money that decided that they're not
for the most
supporting
part,
you.
they are. You know, Barr did a book. Barr was a coward. The name people that you name, for every person you name, I can name 20 people that loved the administration. And maybe more importantly, the voters love the administration. The voters are dying to get back to it, Brett. The voters are tired of being laughed at all over the world. We're run by a fool. We're run by a man that doesn't have a clue.
I want to talk about foreign policy, but just to leave this, you have former senior advisor Steve Cortes saying it's going to be tough for you to get the best and the brightest because of some of the name-calling of people who left. So what do you say to that?
Cortez is a nice person, but I didn't give him the job he wanted because I didn't think he was qualified. Then he went over to the Sanctimonious' camp. I didn't give him the job. So I'd probably say the same kind of thing if I wouldn't get a job, if somebody wants a job. And a lot of the people that you mentioned there, they didn't get the job. A couple of them weren't made permanent. I didn't want to make them permanent because I didn't think they were good enough. Now, during the course of that 4 years, I know the best people. Remember this. We took out ISIS. We developed Space Force. I rebuilt the military. I got the largest tax cuts in history. I got the largest regulation cuts in history. I did right to try so that people don't have to die without a chance. We could use space-age medical knowledge, and we have the greatest labs in the world. I did all of these things and much, much more. Nobody's ever seen it like that. One other thing, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine. China would never be talking about even the concept of going into Taiwan. Would have never happened. I was getting out of Afghanistan. We would have gotten out through dignity and strength. Instead, it was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. These are all great things, and people want them back.
Mr. President, stand by if you would. Please join us after this break for the second part of the interview tonight. Welcome back to Bedminster and special report, joined again by the 45th President of the United States.
We do not support Taiwan independence.
Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. You've been very critical towards Biden administration policy toward China. Today, Blinken said this: "We do not support Taiwan independence." Should Taiwan be independent?
So if I tell you an answer, it's going to hurt me in negotiations on the assumption that I win. But I have a very good relationship with President Xi. After COVID came in, I sort of didn't want the relationship, and I sort of ended the relationship after having made one of the greatest trade deals ever made, including USMCA, Mexico, Canada. But I made deals with Japan, I made deals with many countries. We had the worst trade deals, now we have the best trade deals. By the way, USMCA, Canada, and Mexico, it's so good because we replaced NAFTA, which everybody said, you even said, be impossible to end it. I got it terminated by Congress, actually, and got USMCA. It's so good now that Mexico and Canada, Mexico, well, it's a long time ago, but Mexico and Canada, it's so good they want to renegotiate the deal. I hope they don't do that. I hope we don't agree to that. But I made the best trade deal with China, $50 billion a year, where they have to buy from us. I got $28 billion from China to give to our farmers because our farmers were treated badly.
So would you keep the China tariffs on?
I would keep the China tariffs on.
What would take them off?
No, I'd keep them on, absolutely. It's a tremendous power thing. You keep them on. China was dying over the tariffs. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. No other president has ever taken 10 cents. I watched Gordon Chang the other night say the only one that was tough on China, so tough that frankly he couldn't believe it, was Donald Trump.
So the question is, would you, if China invaded Taiwan, would you go to war to defend Taiwan?
I don't want to say that because that hurts me in negotiations with regard to President Xi. Now, he knows what I do. And by the way, for 4 years, they didn't invade Taiwan, and they never even talked about it. You'll find very few discussions about it. And for 4 years, Russia never even thought about it because Putin and I had a very good relationship, business relationship, but I got along with him and he got along with me despite the phony Russia witch hunt, which made it much more difficult. Having that phony Adam Schiff, Hillary Clinton witch hunt for 2.5 years going on made it much more difficult. Despite that, he knew he could not go into Ukraine. I told him very strongly, you can't do it. And if you do it, it's going to be a problem. And he never did.
I want to talk about Ukraine, but just to end on China, this weekend, President Biden, speaking of that Chinese spy balloon, said this.
I think it was more embarrassing than it was intentional.
What do you think about that?
I think it's such a stupid
What would you have done?
He doesn't know what he's... They wouldn't have ever had a spy balloon if I was president. There wouldn't be a spy balloon over our country. That spy balloon was going right over our nuclear sites, taking pictures. And we killed it after it was leaving. It was going back home to China, wherever it was going. But we shot it down over the ocean after it had done all of its work. You know, they don't keep it on the balloon and then you pick it up. That stuff is sent back to China instantaneously as it's taken. So a statement like that is so stupid. They've taken pictures of every one of our nuclear facilities in the Midwest, where we have a lot, where they know better than anybody that we have a lot.
And you're saying that wouldn't happen under you?
They wouldn't have ever done it, no. They wouldn't have ever done it, no. President Xi and I had a very strong relationship, just like I did with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Look, when I took office, everyone assumed we were going to war with North Korea, including President Obama. He said, the single biggest problem we have in the world today is North Korea. I said, have you called him? And I got sort of a mixed answer. The answer is he did call, but Kim Jong-un wouldn't see them, okay? Tough guy, smart guy, tough guy. I got along with him, and there was no threat. I did an amazing job. That would have been a war. If Obama would have stayed, or if Hillary Clinton would have been in, a little bit longer, if they would have extended his term miraculously, but if Hillary Clinton would have gone, you would have had a nuclear war with North Korea. And by the way, you're possibly very close right now. This is the most dangerous time in the history of our country. You're possibly very close to having a nuclear war with Russia.
All right, let's talk about Russia. You said you would end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours.
That's right.
Your GOP opponents, well, they don't believe that. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie said this. Despite how ridiculous that is to say, I suspect he would try to do it by turning Ukraine over to Putin and Russia. How would you do that?
Okay, ready? Number one, Chris Christie, who I know very well, he got out of New Jersey after the Bridgegate scandal, which was a mess. He got out of New Jersey with a 9% approval rating, and most people say it was less than that, okay? No, he wouldn't be the right guy to do it, but I am. I got along with Zelensky very well because he came up with the impeachment hoax #1. He come up, you know what he said? No, I wasn't threatened at all. I don't even know what you're talking about. When they said, were you threatened by President Trump? He was very good. He could have grandstanded and said, well, I felt a little bit threatened. No, he wasn't threatened at all. And he said it very loud and I got along with him very well. I respected him for that. Because frankly, he could have done a grandstand and, you know, maybe look good, maybe look bad, I don't know, but he could have done something different. He said, I was never threatened. That was a very nice conversation. I called him up to congratulate him. And with Putin, I have a very good relationship. I mean, I haven't spoken to him in a long while, but I had a very strong relationship
But
with
was he
Putin.
wrong to invade Ukraine?
He wouldn't have done it if it were me.
But it
He
was the
did
wrong
that
move.
after I left. I thought he might do it. Look, I talked to him. I said, if you do it, there's going to be hell to pay. It's going to be a catastrophe. Don't do it. He said, no, 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 you won't do that. I told him I was going to do something. He said, no, 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 you will not do that. I said, I will, Vladimir, I will do it. I'm going to do it.
You're gonna
And you
do
know what? He didn't believe
off-
me. Whatever. It was pretty bad. And he didn't believe me at all, except for maybe 10%. And 10% is all you needed. There was no threat. It was only after I left that you started hearing about this.
But you believe
I will
Ukraine
tell
is
you,
a separate country from Russia.
yeah, right, it's a separate country,
And so
but at
should
one
Putin-
point it wasn't a separate
Right.
country.
Should Putin
and,
have
and
Crimea?
Putin liked it that way better.
Is that part of the deal? Should Putin get Crimea? Is
Well,
that
right,
what you?
Right now, I don't talk about those deals because it really would impede a negotiation. But I'm telling you, within 24 hours, that's what I did. I became very rich by doing deals, very rich. And you know what? Much more so than people even understand. And that's what I do. I would have a deal done in 24 hours from the time we started. And I would tell Zelensky something, and I would tell Putin something, and I'd get him into a room, and I'd tell him again and again. I would have a deal done very quickly. And you know what? The death would stop, and the destruction would stop. Because look, Ukraine has been wiped out.
Under your administration, the U.S. did not go to war.
First time in 78
Can you
years.
see a scenario where you would go to war if Iran, for example, got a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, we would have had a great deal with Iran. I was getting very close to Iran. We would have had a deal done with Iran within 2 weeks after the election. They wouldn't have had a nuclear weapon, and they would have been very happy. Everybody would have been happy. I terminated that horrible thing called the Iran nuclear deal, one of the dumbest deals I've ever seen. I've seen some dumb ones. NAFTA was bad. They were all bad. The dumbest one was the Iran nuclear deal, where billions of dollars in cash was brought over to Iran in Boeing 757s and just handed billions, cash, green, I mean green cash. Remember one thing about that deal, it expired in a short period of time. You know, it expired. And that gave them an open road to having nuclear weapons. You know, people thought like this Iran nuclear deal that was done by Obama was like a good deal. It was so terrible. But remember this, it expired in just about now. It expired. And once it expired, they had the right to do anything. I terminated that deal, was on my way to making an unbelievable deal where they don't have nuclear weapons. The other thing I think, doing very well with China and Russia, getting rid of nuclear weapons. I was making a lot of progress on that until the election.
And you think that's all gone away?
I think it can come back, but it certainly went away quickly.
One of the people,
Because
one of the
this current
countries.
administration doesn't have the capability to do it. They don't have the capability to do it. They don't have a clue. The Chinese, very smart. This is a very smart country. They own us. Until I came along, they just owned every president, including presidents that I liked. But remember this, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. I put a 50% tax on a tariff on, tax or tariff, you can call it either one, but I put a tariff on steel. If I didn't do that, you wouldn't have any steel mills. If I didn't do that, you wouldn't have washing machines in the United States being made anymore.
One of the countries that's very concerned, obviously, about Iran and its nuclear ambitions is Saudi Arabia.
Sure.
What do you make of the Biden administration policy to Saudi Arabia?
I think it's terrible. We've lost Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, they're friends of mine. They're great people. The crown prince and the king, I got along with them incredibly good. They would do anything. They are great, great people. But they've actually gone over to China now, if you think about it. Think of it. It was even unthinkable. If somebody suggested it during my administration, nobody would take it even seriously. Saudi Arabia has really gone over to China. China's protecting them now. We have lost Saudi Arabia. Biden goes over and does a fist pump with the king. Now he's the king, the future king of Saudi Arabia. You know what a fist pump is? Don't touch my hands because they're dirty. So he tells him, don't touch my hands because your hands are dirty. Let's do a fist pump. And he does a fist pump. Do you know how insulted they were by that? Look, we have people that are stupid running our country. This is the most dangerous time in the history, in my opinion, in the history of our country, in the history of the world, because of the power of weaponry. This is the most unbelievably dangerous time because of nuclear weapons and other things, by the way. We have incompetent people running our country in the most dangerous time. Now, little articles come out, little articles, just like two sentences long, that they spotted Russia sending nuclear weapons to Belarus. Little article, like 2 sentences. I said, that's a big thing. See, that's a big thing. That's so big. Can't allow that to happen. That's so big.
So what would you have done?
What's going to happen? He wouldn't have done it with me. Putin wouldn't have done it with me, but that's the difference. Hard to explain that to people.